Senior Salute Radio is presented by the Estate and Asset Protection Law Firm of Victoria Collier.
And hello and welcome to Senior Salute Radio, presented by the Estate and Asset Protection Law Firm of Victoria Collier. I'm Mike Salmon alongside Victoria Collier. And Senior Salute Radio brings timely information to leading age boomers and seniors addressing the issues of aging, caregiving, and maintaining the quality of life. And today, Victoria, we're going to be discussing tax planning through the use of trusts. So first of all, welcome back to Business Radio X.
Thank you, Mike. It's great always to be here and to be able to share information with our community.
Absolutely. Well, most people don't have taxable assets anymore. So why do we still need tax planning if that's the case?
And that's a great question. And before I answer it, let's go ahead and talk about why we don't have a large number of people with taxable estates anymore. Even though I still host seminars, and that's the one thing people tell me they want to protect is their assets when they die so that they're not taxed. Well, as the laws have been changing each year, the amount that you can have when you die keeps going up, meaning that you can have more and more before the federal government or before the state government will tax you on it. Now, every state is different in that regard, but Georgia, for example, which is where we are, it follows the federal laws. And so under the federal tax laws, an individual can pass up to $11,400,000 at death without being taxed on that. And if you're married, you get to double that. So that's like $22 million that you can pass with no taxes.
Right.
And so that's not the majority of the clients that we see in our office for sure. But yet, people still need to plan for tax planning. But once they hear, I don't have an estate tax issue, they don't think they have to do planning at all, right? And so then we're left with people who are leaving money on the table when they die, and their beneficiaries who could be living with more, which leads to a better quality of life. And that's really what my mission is in life, is to help people live and die with a higher quality of life.
Absolutely.
So,
that's a very noble mission, by the way.
Thank you.
But using trusts, how does that fit into the equation?
Well, how it fits is that when people do regular estate planning, what they are mostly thinking about is death distribution. Who's going to get my stuff, right? And so that's part of the question. But what a large amount of even estate planning attorneys don't ask their clients is, how much stuff do you want to leave people, and how can we minimize the tax on that? And we can't do that with a regular will in most cases, okay? And so what we have to do is we have to use trust planning to not only minimize taxes, but also provide a lot more protection to of those assets when they're in the hands of other people. Because we can manage and control things while we're alive, and then we know the decisions we're making. But when I hand that over to you when I die, I can't control how you're going to spend it if I'm just using a will and hand it to you outright, okay? But when I use a trust, then I can still control from the grave how you're going to use it, when you're going to use it, and how much of it's going to be taxed. And so there's 3 different primary trusts that I want to discuss today.
Okay.
And each of them has 3 primary benefits to them as well. And so I would like to start off by saying that one trust does not fit all, that different trusts have different purposes, and therefore different trusts have different benefits to them. So when someone says, well, I want a trust, we still have to go into the whole conversation about what's the purpose, why do you want it? These are the reasons why you might want to consider one if someone on their own doesn't know that they want one, and really get into what do you have, what are your goals?
Okay. And there's 3 different kinds.
Right. And so the first one that I want to focus on. And when I say there's 3 different kinds, there's 3 different kinds we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
There's a plethora of kinds.
We wish it was that simple where there were just 3,
Right.
but it never is.
Right.
Which is why we need someone like you to help explain it.
Yes. And so today we're going to focus just on 3.
Okay.
And the first one I want to focus on is a trust that helps protect a home place. Now, often, unless you've got the mega millions, often your home and your retirement funds are your largest assets.
Right.
And so when people have, saved their whole life and they have no debt, meaning that seniors are very proud of the fact that they've paid everything off, they don't have debt, and they want to pass that on to the next generation. That how do we pass that on in the most tax efficient way, and how do we protect it now while we're alive? Okay, and so there's a very particular type of trust we use, which is irrevocable, which in the South that's pronounced irrevocable, and people are afraid of that word, irrevocable. It sounds so permanent,
So final, yeah.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that when working with a specialist who doesn't just use standard templates that don't understand every provision that's in the template, but they've been told in a 1-hour seminar that, hey, this will protect your asset, that can be dangerous, and it can be final, and it can be permanent. But when using a certified elder law attorney, for example, like myself, then we know how to make the language fit our client. And when we want to protect this house, the first question is, who are we protecting it from? Okay? So many of our clients in the second half of life, they want to protect their house from the government if they go into a nursing home and then apply for Medicaid. Because if we're on Medicaid and we die and then we have a house, then the state says, we helped you along the way while you're alive, but we don't care about your heirs and your loved ones and your family, so we're going to take the value back from your house. So if we can plan early enough, then we actually put that house into the right type of trust, and then not only does it protect it from the government taking it, but it also has some huge tax advantages when we use the right kind of trust. And the kind of trust we draft saves the homestead exemption, which means that I am the person who lives there. I am a senior citizen, so I get other discounts, and therefore my taxes are a lot lower than, for example, if I own a home that I rent out to somebody else. And when you put it in the wrong kind of trust, that's exactly what happens, is they treat it as a separate owner, and now you've got to get renter's insurance, which is more expensive than homeowner's insurance, and your taxes go up. So it's not just that it's in an irrevocable trust, it's in the kind that preserves your homestead, which is a tax. It's also the kind that preserves what's called your 121 capital gains exclusion if that house were going to be sold while you're alive, okay? So when a person owns a house individually and they've lived in it for at least 2 to 5 years before they sell it, if they're single, they get to write off up to $250,000 of gain that they've gotten over the years. And if you're married, it's twice that, so it's $500,000 of gain. And when we say, well, I want to protect my house and give it to my child, and then the child ends up selling it, well, that child has to pay all those gains, okay? Or when we put it in the wrong irrevocable trust, then you lose that exclusion. So we want to put it in the right kind of trust so we have the flexibility to be able to sell our house if we need to. For example, if I move to an assisted living facility, at some point, the kids say, or the grown-up, the adult says, don't sell my house, it's very personal to me. And the kids want to honor that. But at some point, they're like, look, I've got maintenance, we have insurance, and now the insurance company knows you're not living there, so they're going to increase the premiums, and it becomes a wasted asset. So sometimes it makes sense to sell it. We want to make sure that we can exclude those capital gains taxes, and when we use the right kind of trust, we can do that. And then the third benefit of that type of trust is that if I do hold on to it until I die, in that type of trust. Then, with the right language in the trust, we can actually get what's called step up in basis at death, which means if I paid $50,000 for the house 50 years ago and now it's worth $500,000, then when I die, my beneficiaries get it at the date of death value. They sell it the next day, there are no taxes. Whereas if I put it into the wrong kind of trust, or if I give it right to my children, when they sell it, they don't get that step up in basis.
So they would pay taxes perhaps on $450,000, the difference in what was the purchase price.
Exactly. And so many people do, in fact, understand the benefits of trust, but they use the wrong one that get rid of all of those tax advantages.
This first trust you brought up, what is this trust called again?
Well, it's an irrevocable
Or what should
trust.
they ask their attorney for?
Right. The basics that keep those exclusions is that we have to have an income right to the trust. So some people will call it an income-only trust, and that keeps those kinds of tax advantages. However, and I don't want to provide legal advice to the general public because everybody's situation is different. And what I do want to say is that when people who have declining health, when people who believe and are probable to need a higher level of care, if we were to, for example, transfer all their assets, to include the home, to an income-only trust, which is the most popular type of irrevocable trust out there, when they're not familiar with all the nuances of need, then if they use the standard blanket income-only trust, then they're going to lose access to those resources. It may protect them from the government. It may also protect their income tax issues I just mentioned. But what if we have a crisis and we need access to the funds in the trust? Well, that's where the creative planning comes in. And that's why it's dangerous to say what is the type of trust I'm talking about, because if they just went to a lawyer and said, I want an income-only trust so I can protect my house and get all the tax advantages, they're still not going to get the creative drafting that allows access to the principal. And there's ways to do that and still protect it from the government.